since 1963 when he mistakenly thought Stan Mikita was an Aboriginal Canadian, I think it was. Yes, which he looked like. So Chief Paul is going to be introduced by Paul LaFlèche. Paul is currently the Deputy Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure with the Government of Nova Scotia. Been in that position since 2012. Has had many other positions as a advisor, a dedicated public servant, a teacher, and a researcher. And so I am pleased to be able to welcome Paul to the stage.
Thank you. Very pleased to be here tonight to introduce Chief Terry Paul. Chief Paul was first elected in 1984, and he's a proud member of the Member 2 First Nation, which is in Unamaki or Cape Breton Island, Nova Scotia. He is a respected leader who has guided the Member 2 band to becoming one of the most progressive, efficient, and sustainable Indigenous communities in Canada over the years. Prior to being elected chief, he served Member 2 as Economic Development Officer and Band Manager. Allow me first to say a few words about Member 2. The band is, in fact, the reserve is named after Grand Chief Member 2, who, according to my facts here, lived 101 years, and maybe, Chief, you can explain that a little later, how that occurred. It's a long life. The community of Member 2 belongs to the greater tribal group of the Mi'kmaq Nation. Member 2 is situated about 3 kilometers from the waterfront in Sydney, and there's a little bit of a history about that. It is one of 5 Mi'kmaq communities in Cape Breton and one of 13 in the province of Nova Scotia. It is really an urban First Nation community located somewhat in the center of the city of Sydney, which is part of now the Cape Breton Regional Municipality, with a population of about 100,000. The community itself of Member 2 has about 1,400 population. It was in fact moved from its original location on Kings Road Reserve by the Government of Canada in 1926. And this was in fact the first time an Aboriginal community had ever been moved or forced to move to relocate in Canadian history. When Chief Paul first got involved as chief, in 1995, the Member 2 band had 30 employees, operated on a $4 million budget, and was dealing with a $1 million annual deficit. The community was poor, it had low morale, and a high unemployment rate. Opportunities for its population were extremely limited. It was then that Chief Terrance Paul decided it was time for a major change. He took the initiative with great determination. He and the council of the time recruited band members who had moved away and had successful careers elsewhere and had pursued education. They were employed throughout the country. This newly formed leadership group decided that Member 2 needed really a new approach. It needed to break with sort of the past economic development and social development approaches and try something completely new. The first thing they had to do was put their financial house in order. Now, as anybody knows, and we have some a former premier here and some others who've worked in the provincial finance areas, very difficult to get your finances in order. It involves tough choices, it involves pain and suffering, and it's difficult to lead people through that period. Chief Paul was able to do that. With the financial house in order, they departed on a second initiative. What Member 2 wanted to do was play a greater role in the economy. And to do that, it had to generate new revenue streams and decrease their dependence on traditional government revenues. They had to actively forge a new economic frontier, one that is built on the innovations of today, while at the same time incorporating Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous culture into their practice. Sustainability of resources and reverence for the land and waters was a key ideal that they pursued. With the principles of conservation, sustainability, innovation, and success firmly in place, Member 2 then strategically increased its profile by opening a Halifax-based office. There, they were able to reach out to some of the major corporations and major players and services in the engineering, mining, construction, GIS, and information technology, management and consulting fields, insurance, commercial and fisheries, and real estate. And they were able to make connections, which would later help them. They were also able to show these companies how they could be of help in increasing their businesses. The third strategic decision that Member 2 made at that time was to initiate proactive education and career training programs for the residents of Member 2 in order to maximize employment opportunities that arose as a result of new business opportunities. These three strategic decisions continue to build momentum on the Member 2 Reserve and continue to drive their economic success. Over the past 15 years, Member 2 has grown from what I described before, a $4 million budget, approximately 30 employees, to about 700 employees and a $112 million a year budget. They are the first Indigenous community in the world to receive ISO 9001 certification. All of this was achieved in a difficult regional economic and climate that many of us here have lived through. Chief Paul has enjoyed repeated business and community success, developing such things as the Member 2 Trade and Convention Center, the Member 2 Market, the Member 2 Gaming Commission, the Member 2 Data Center, Member 2 Geomatics, and Member 2 Commercial Fisheries, Real Estate, and Insurance Brokerage. A bit about Chief Paul himself and what drove him. He began his career with the Boston Indian Council in the early 1970s, where he gained extensive knowledge in administration and financial management. He was a founding member of the National Aboriginal Capital Corporation, which he helped expand from 7 members to more than 50 Indigenous corporations across Canada. Chief Paul was instrumental in assisting Donald Marshall Jr. in his successful Supreme Court challenge, which eventually ended up with approximately $600 million in benefits for the Mi'kmaq people. He has sat on numerous committees, boards. He is past chair of the First Nation Financial Authority Board. He received the Order of Canada in June 2017 for his unique leadership in upholding Indigenous rights and for building a unique model of sustainable financial independence for the Member 2 community. Chief Paul was awarded an honorary doctorate of law from the Cape Breton University, and he is a member of the Junior Achievement Nova Scotia Business Hall of Fame. Please join me in welcoming a man of great vision, integrity, community focus, and unwavering dedication, Chief Terrance Paul.
Well, you will log. Boy, with that introduction, I don't have much else to say. my speech, don't worry, my speech will be a lot shorter than my introduction. Again, well, you will log, ahwaladio. Good evening, and thank you. I am very honored and humbled to be here this evening to accept this award. As the Chief of Member 2, for almost 34 years, being awarded this honor in the name of Mr. McKenna means very much to me. As a leader, Mr. McKenna holds a legacy of great leadership, a standard that I, too, work to achieve each and every day as Chief and CEO of Member 2. Thank you, Mr. McKenna, and the Public Policy Forum for bestowing this award upon me and my community. Member 2 is an urban Mi'kmaq community located just minutes from downtown Sydney in Cape Breton. I am incredibly proud of the success we've been able to reach economically and socially over the last 3 decades. Though our success did not happen by chance, each and every day our team works to be thoughtful about our investments, our business decisions, and how the implications of what we do in terms of economic development will shape the future of our community for our youth. 30 years ago, Member 2 was at its crossroads. We had to think about whether or not we should continue on an economically depressed path or think towards the future. And in order to reach that future, we would have to create change. As we sat at the table together and started looking at what possibilities laid before us, we chose change. From then, and even today, our council, along with our Member 2 corporate executive team, often chart our own paths forward. When we reach a barrier, we don't quit. We don't walk away. We don't accept no. We find a new opportunity. 30 years ago, we had to make initial smart decisions to get started. In building our community, our first step was securing ISO certification, building trust with developers and business people alike to ensure that we were a credible organization to do business with. In fact, we were the first Indigenous community in the world to be accredited with the ISO certification. From there, we worked closely with the Financial Management Board to create financial laws and guidelines that have allowed us to be financially secure and transparent in how we operate. We had to change attitudes and let our greater business community know that the Mi'kmaq were good to do business with. Since putting these processes in place, we've seen immense growth in economic development and in business partnerships and relationships throughout these years. In my early days as chief, and as you may have heard earlier, we had under 30 employees in Member 2. Today, we have upwards of 700 employees and are the third largest employer in the Cape Breton Regional Municipality. We are able to employ nearly 300 community members from Member 2. And we employ 60% of non-Indigenous people from across Cape Breton and beyond. We're proud of what we've been able to accomplish thus far, but certainly we're not finished yet. We have plans to continue land and real estate development and beyond, and there are in the works now. I would like to also acknowledge that I owe a lot of thanks to the support and leadership from several close mentors, some of whom are in the room tonight. working with informative people and informed people. And an example of that would be the people that serve on the Cape Breton University Shannon School of Business Executive Board. But I serve on many others that are very helpful and do help change policy for the better for the people. Thank you so much for this wonderful award. I am so grateful for the opportunity to be here with all of you tonight. I share this award with my family and my community, who has put their faith and trust in me for these 3 decades. If you have the opportunity, come and visit us in Membertou. We would be happy to share our vibrant Mi'kmaq culture and the development of our community with you. Thank you.